Taylor Hayes never expected her life to veer so wildly off course. She was a respected psychiatrist, a woman known for her calm, her insight, her control. But all of that shattered the night she ended up in Deacon Sharp's bed. It began innocently enough, just to wounded souls looking for solace. Their sessions had blurred the lines. What began as therapy had become confession, and what began as confession had become something much more dangerous. Taylor had spent weeks listening to Deacon talk through his pain, his regrets, and the weight of his past with Sheila Carter. At first, she kept her professional distance, offering advice and insight like any therapist would. But Deacon was raw, honest. He wasn't hiding behind charm or bravado. For once, he was vulnerable, and that vulnerability pulled Taylor in. She told herself it was temporary, a lapse in judgment, a one-time mistake driven by loneliness and too much wine. They had crossed a line, but she swore to bury it. She would move on, compartmentalize, and return to her life. No one would ever know, but fate had other plans. Weeks later, Taylor began to feel off, tired, nauseous, moody. At first, she blamed stress, then age. But as the symptoms persisted, reality crashed in. She took the test, then another, then another. The result was always the same. She was pregnant with Deacon's child. The shock hit her like a wave. She wasn't young anymore. She wasn't planning for children. Her life was already chaotic, split between professional responsibilities and the constant turmoil of the Forrester family. But this baby was real. Unexpected, yes, but real. And for the first time in a long time, she felt something she hadn't in years. Joy. But joy wasn't the only emotion. Fear followed quickly. How would Steffi react? How would Ridge? Thomas? The entire Forrester clan had spent years entangled in bitter battles with the likes of Deacon Sharp. Deacon was always the outsider, always the mistake no one wanted to acknowledge. He had a reputation criminal, reckless, emotionally toxic. And now he was the father of Taylor's child. Taylor knew what was coming. Judgment, condemnation, isolation. The Forresters would never accept this. Not after everything they'd been through. Not when Deacon had once been involved with Brooke and fathered Hope. Not when his history was tangled with Sheila's. Taylor considered hiding it. She told herself it might be better if no one knew. She could leave town, retreat somewhere quiet, have the baby in peace. But she couldn't lie forever. Not to her family, not to Deacon, and definitely not to herself. The decision to tell Deacon came sooner than she expected. She asked him to meet her privately, away from the noise, away from the judgmental eyes of Los Angeles. When he arrived, he was casual, lighthearted, clearly not expecting the bombshell she was about to drop. "I'm pregnant," she said, without ceremony. He froze. His face blanked. For a second, he didn't speak, just stared at her, processing. Then came the disbelief, the nervous laugh, then silence again. But Taylor held her ground. This wasn't a dream. This wasn't a mistake to erase. This was real. Deacon's reaction was complicated. He'd never seen himself as a father again. He was barely holding together his relationship with Hope, trying to keep his past from pulling him back under. But the idea of new life, of a fresh start, sparked something in him. He wasn't sure he was ready, but he didn't want to run either. Not this time. Not from Taylor. Still, both knew that the storm was coming. When Taylor finally told Steffi, her daughter's reaction was exactly what she feared. Outrage, confusion, disbelief. Steffi demanded answers. "How could you?" she asked, her voice shaking with anger. "After everything Dad went through, after everything we've been through with Deacon and Sheila? How could you let this happen?" Taylor tried to explain, tried to talk about pain, healing, connection, but none of it mattered to Steffi. She didn't want nuance. She wanted clarity. And in her eyes, Taylor had betrayed the family. Ridge, when he found out, was no better. His face twisted in that familiar blend of disappointment and quiet rage. He didn't raise his voice, but his silence said everything. Thomas. He didn't speak at all, just left. The Forresters closed ranks. They didn't support the relationship. They didn't support the pregnancy. And Taylor found herself standing alone again. Deacon, for his part, tried to be there. He showed up to appointments. He brought food. He asked questions. But Taylor could see the guilt in his eyes, the hesitation. He wasn't used to this kind of responsibility, and part of him wondered if the Forresters were right, if he was just another bad decision in a lifetime of regrets. Still, the baby changed everything. Taylor started feeling kicks. She saw the ultrasound. She heard the heartbeat. And with every new development, her resolve hardened. She didn't need approval. She didn't need validation. She was going to raise this child with or without support, because for the first time in years, she had something that was truly hers, not tied to Ridge, not caught in Brooke's shadow, not twisted in the endless cycle of betrayal and redemption. This baby was hers, and it gave her strength. But nothing in LA stays quiet for long. News of the pregnancy spread. Gossip columns ran with the headline, Dr. Taylor Hayes expecting Deacon Sharp's child. The speculation exploded. Was it a drunken fling? A secret affair? A calculated move? Everyone had an opinion. Even Brooke, who tried to remain neutral, found herself spiraling. The idea of Deacon and Taylor, a woman she'd warred with 4 years starting a family, was too much. And for Hope, it was chaos. Her father now had a child on the way with the mother of her step-siblings. The lines of family blurred so deeply it was hard to tell where one ended and the other began. The tension climaxed when the Forresters demanded Taylor reconsider. They wanted her to walk away, raise the baby in private. Cut Deacon out. It's not too late, Steffi pleaded. You can still protect this child from that man's influence. But Taylor had heard enough. She wasn't a child. She wasn't fragile. And she wasn't going to raise her baby in fear of family politics. She stood her ground sharper than ever. This is my baby, and this is my decision. I won't be ashamed of it. In the months that followed, Taylor embraced her new chapter. She moved into a quieter part of town, away from the drama. Deacon, though not perfect, became more present. He helped build the nursery. He started attending birthing classes. He even began therapeutic therapy, not just the kind that led to heated nights and unexpected consequences. And as the due date approached, something shifted. Ridge softened. Brooke stopped lashing out. Even Steffi, who had sworn never to accept it, began asking questions about the baby's health. The Forresters were still wary, but the anger, the disgust, it began to cool, because in the end, the child wasn't a scandal. He wasn't a mistake. He was family. When the day finally came, Taylor gave birth to a healthy baby boy. She held him in her arms, exhausted but full of a kind of love she hadn't felt in decades. Deacon stood at her side, eyes wide with awe, tears barely contained. He wasn't perfect. He never would be. But in that moment, he was exactly what Taylor needed. The road ahead wasn't going to be easy. The Forresters might never fully accept this new addition. The past would always cast a shadow. But Taylor didn't care anymore. She had her son. She had a new beginning. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't need anyone else's permission to be happy. This was her story now, hers and Deacon's. And no one, not Ridge, not Steffi, not even the ghost of Sheila was going to take that away. Hope Logan had been searching for something bold, something that would rip through the fabric of predictability and reignite the soul of her once thriving line, hope for the future. She wasn't just looking for a designer. She needed a spark, a shift in energy, a pulse. When she opened the thick portfolio that had been left on her desk, she wasn't expecting much. Fashion portfolios came and went like passing trends. But this one practically screamed her name. Inside were designs that bent the rules but still echoed her core vision: hope, strength, individuality. She flipped through the sketches, intrigued. The work was fresh, confident, subtle yet rebellious. It was only after a second look that she noticed the name, Deke Sharp. Deke wasn't a stranger. He was family or half-brother. Their connection was complicated, but not unfamiliar. He understood her in a way few did, even when they didn't always see eye to eye. But what mattered now wasn't their bloodline, it was the designs. Hope saw potential. She saw a way forward. She saw hope for the future revived, modernized, and fearlessly real. Hiring Deke wasn't just a business move. It was a statement, a line in the sand. She was taking control. Ridge Forrester, Brooke Logan, and Carter Walton were quick to show their support. They saw the same thing Hope did. Raw talent and edge the brand had been lacking. Deke was the creative jolt they'd been waiting for, but not everyone was on board. Enter Steffi Forrester. When Steffi saw Deke's sketches for the first time, her expression said it all. It wasn't just concern, it was resistance. She wasn't sold on the direction. Steffi knew fashion. She knew the Forrester brand. And in her eyes, Deke's vision didn't quite align with Hope for the future's identity. She saw the designs as too aggressive, too out of sync with the softer, more grounded messaging Hope had always leaned on. And Steffi wasn't quiet about it. Hope could feel the tension brewing before Steffi said a word. And when the words finally came, they cut deep. Steffi questioned whether Deke was the right fit. She pushed back, suggesting that perhaps Deke's talents would be better used on another line, maybe something Steffi had more oversight on. It wasn't just a suggestion, it was a power play. Hope saw it clearly, and it infuriated her. Hope had fought hard to reclaim her line. She'd endured corporate reshuffles, personal betrayals, and the humiliating shutdown of Hope for the future. Deke was her shot at breathing life back into the brand. She wasn't about to let Steffi rear out that energy somewhere else. But Steffi wasn't backing down either. In her own calculated way, Steffi began maneuvering. She called Deke into a private meeting, painting the conversation as a casual pitch, nothing serious. But the offer was real. She wanted him on a different project, one that, in her words, matched his strengths more naturally. She talked about a bold menswear concept. Something classic, with an edge. Something with his name on it. Deke, caught off guard, didn't shut her down immediately. How could he? Steffi was co-CEO. She was powerful. She was persuasive. And her vision, admittedly, was intriguing. Hope found out quickly. Rumors travel fast inside Forrester Creations. The moment she heard what Steffi was up to, she stormed into her office, barely waiting for the door to shut behind her before confronting her. "Are you trying to steal him?" Hope asked, voice sharp. "Or are you just trying to sabotage me again?" The argument was explosive. Years of rivalry surfaced in seconds. Every unresolved grudge, every buried jab. Steffi claimed she was only looking out for the company. Hope accused her of being threatened. Steffi fired back, accusing Hope of being reckless, emotional, and blinded by family ties. It wasn't just about Deke. It was about everything. Meanwhile, Deke was stuck in the middle. On one hand, he wanted to help his sister rebuild a brand that meant something to her. On the other, Steffi's offer was tempting. It offered prestige, autonomy, and a faster track to credibility within Forrester's elite circles. But ultimately, loyalty won, at least for now. Deke stood by Hope. Publicly, he reaffirmed his commitment to Hope for the future. He doubled down on the designs, pushing the line in a bold new direction. The pieces started to come together, literal pieces. The prototypes were cleaner, stronger. They told a story, one of reinvention, of growth. And beneath all of it was the creative synergy between Hope and Deke. The line began to build momentum. Internally, buzz started spreading. Even Ridge, a skeptic by nature, began warming up to the new aesthetic. Brooke, ever her daughter's supporter, praised the vision and the courage behind it. Carter called the designs market-ready and began coordinating with PR for a possible relaunch event. Steffi watched it all, her expression unreadable. Part of her still believed Deck's designs weren't quite aligned with hope for the future, but even she couldn't deny the craftsmanship, the bold lines, the way the fabrics moved. It was different, yes, but different didn't always mean wrong. The moment of truth came with the announcement. Hope for the Future would return with a full-scale fashion show. Not a soft launch, not a preview, a show. All eyes would be on them. It was a high-stakes gamble. If it failed, Hope would have no excuses left. But if it succeeded, it would silence every critic, Steffi included. Backstage, on the day of the show, the atmosphere was electric. Models were being prepped. Stylists rushed around like honeybees, working every detail. Hope stood beside Deke, nerves barely hidden beneath her calm exterior. Steffi arrived, arms crossed, taking in the chaos with a clinical eye. She said little, but the weight of her presence was undeniable. And then the lights dimmed. The music hit, and the first model stepped onto the runway. Gasps, flashes, applause. One by one, the designs strutted out structured jackets with daring asymmetry, flowing dresses with fierce angles, muted colors that still popped under the lights. It wasn't safe, it wasn't typical, but it was undeniably fresh. As the final look came down the runway, a standing ovation erupted from the front row. The fashion press had seen something special. Buyers leaned forward, eager. Influencers whispered frantically, already dreaming up their coverage. Hope turned to Steffi, whose expression had softened. There was no smugness, no snide remark, just a slow, almost reluctant nod. The show had been a triumph. In the days that followed, orders came in faster than the team could process. Social media buzzed with praise. Fashion blogs declared Hope for the Future reborn. Deke became the name on every intern's lips. And Hope finally stood tall, validated. Steffi, for her part, acknowledged the win. Quietly, respectfully. She didn't apologize for her doubts, but she didn't need to. The success spoke for itself. And while the rivalry would always simmer beneath the surface, for now there was peace. But this was the bold and the beautiful. Peace never lasted long. There were whispers already about new competitors, about internal shakeups, about old flames reappearing in the shadows of success. But Hope had faced storms before. And this time, with Deke by her side and a revitalized brand under her command, she was ready for whatever came next. Because Hope for the Future was no longer a dream. It was a force. And no one, not even Steffi, could take that away from her.